How many times a day internally do you say the words artificial intelligence, or are you already sick of it because actually you've been doing it for a while?
No, first of all, thanks for having me. I don't get sick of it. I think it is like the most important topic in tech right now. I think there is still a lot to be understood, but I think we're already seeing a lot of ways in which AI is starting to impact companies, individuals, productivity. So I think finally, after many, many years of people anticipating this with bated breath, we're here and we're seeing a lot of the impacts. And so it's super exciting, not sick of it.
Lattice is a really interesting example, Jack. You had $1 billion valuation in 2021, raised new funds at the beginning of the year, $3 billion valuation. But you're kind of a key example of where AI tools can be applied in enterprise and SaaS. Why is that such a good marriage?
So the way I've been thinking about large language models, which is sort of the thrust of what's been happening in the last couple quarters in AI, is kind of like what calculators did for math. I believe large language models are going to do in many ways for things like reading and writing. So they're going to make people much more readily able to digest and comprehend text and information. We're going to be able to help people draft concepts. So like, for example, in a Lattice world where people are doing lots of writing around performance reviews or goals or feedback, there's a lot of ways in which AI can help people get to good answers more quickly and get to good content more quickly. But I see this as boosters for people in the way that calculators did for math. I see that happening for reading and writing. And so for companies like Lattice, but for tons of enterprise software, I think this is going to be one of the ways in which we see AI really help people.
Jack, of course, your entire business is HR tools, is efficiency, is culture in many ways. And I know you've personally had to navigate that in January, having to let go of people within your team and trying to think about how you can support them. Is ultimately this generative AI and AI going to mean more people get let go because they can be replaced in some way?
Sort of like you mentioned at the beginning, we're definitely going to see different industries and roles be impacted in different ways. But in my view, it's most likely that AI is not going to reduce the demand for labor. I think it's going to increase the demand for labor. Generally, what we see when any asset in the economy becomes more productive is there's more demand for it. So if a software engineer becomes 3 times more productive as a result of AI supporting them, more companies are going to want to hire that person because they're going to be able to produce so much more. So in my view, the lens should be that we're going to become so much more productive, and therefore there's going to be much more demand for labor from companies.
Thinking about lenses and AI is something that you're doing a lot of, your brother's doing a lot of course, in many ways. Sam Altman, who I know you've built businesses with, you live with, previously he's at the cutting edge of where we think ethically generative AI can be built. Are you on the optimistic side? Are you thinking in general that we can harness the productivity and we're not going to have some of the worries about regulating this, or that it's developing just too swiftly for humans?
I am optimistic about AI. I do tend to believe that it is going to be wildly exciting and positive for humanity. I think it is something that is extremely potent, and so I think it is really smart to be paying a lot of attention. I do think it's something that is that requires quite a bit of care and attention, but that's why I think having companies with thoughtful leaders who want to really invest into AI safety and making sure that we're testing things before we release them to the world and that we're working hard on alignment, I think those things are critical. But the way I see it, this has got the potential to be one of the most amazing things for humanity. And so I think investing in it, hopefully optimistically with a lot of conviction and desire to build that kind of world is the right mindset. But of course, being careful because this is such a potent technology. I think that really matters.
Jack, founders all across the country are considering how they can become relevant or not miss the opportunity that AI presents. And that's just one factor. I know you've been tweeting about things that founders have been getting wrong. How hard is it out there right now is really the question. You raised more money at the start of the year at a significantly higher valuation at a time where others were doing the opposite, down rounds.
Yeah, I think it is a challenging time for founders in some sense relative to the last couple of years. Separate from this whole AI acceleration, which is incredibly exciting, on a completely unrelated path, we've had this real economically challenging time for tech in specific. We've seen this happen, as you've covered extremely well. Tech stocks in the public markets have really suffered for a lot of reasons, and that's led to hard times for startups. And so you have two things going on here simultaneously, which is that the world of investing and raising capital for startups has really changed, but we have this really exciting platform shift in a new technology being developed around AI, and we're seeing more and more startups be built with these concepts in mind. I don't think most startups should say AI is an entire concept for building a new company, but any idea that you had 2 years ago, I think you can re-ask the question: in what ways does AI help us solve this problem for customers? It's sort of a misunderstanding of the moment to say, hey, I'm going to build AI and we'll see what happens. I think you still need to build companies rooted in solving real problems for real people, but AI is this technology that can really help in a surprisingly large number of cases.
And let's talk about the problems that Lattice is solving, and it's trying to make people more efficient, particularly in working smoother, being more productive, ensuring that your workflow becomes one that you get feedback more efficiently about. Are people wanting that at the moment? You had 5,000 customers. Is that still building in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think what people want, there are things that individuals want and that companies want, and I think there is a deep alignment when management is done really well. And so I think what individuals want is they want a sense of impact. They want to understand that their company and their manager cares about them. They want to be part of a team doing something important, and they want to know how they're going to be able to grow. What companies want is to build strong cultures of people who are going to be well equipped to do great things and drive the business forward. And so I think what Lattice strives to be is this intersection of those, where you find that individual and company alignment to such a degree where those things are incredibly in harmony. And so I think whether we are in the sort of boom times of 2021 or the new sort of paradigm of 2023, I think those principles hold no matter what. And so I think, for Lattice, just finding the ways to do that for customers is still the North Star.